At the restaurant, my sister suddenly said, "Rachel, go find another table. This one's for family, not adopted girls." Everyone laughed and agreed. Then the waiter came over and handed me a $3,270 bill for their entire dinner. I smiled, took a sip of my drink, and quietly paid it. But just as I was about to leave, I heard a voice say, "Excuse me, ma'am. Just a moment, please. Go find another table. This one's for family, not adopted girls." Those words, dripping with venom, echoed through the elegant dining room of Belmont's, a place I never truly belonged. And then, the laughter. My own family, roaring like it was the funniest joke they'd ever heard, while I stood there, burning with humiliation. It was just the beginning of a night that would unravel 22 years of lies. My name's Rachel, and I was 27. 22 years. That's how long I'd been with this family since they adopted me at 5. 22 years of being constantly reminded I was different, an outsider, less than. Chandeliers sparkled, reflecting off crystal glasses, but inside, I was freezing. The only flicker of warmth, the only person who ever made me feel like I mattered, was Grandma Dorothy. She sat at the far end of the table, her expression unreadable. "Victoria, that's enough," I managed to say, trying desperately to salvage a sliver of dignity. My mother, Patricia, just waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, don't be so sensitive, dear. We're just teasing. You know how Victoria is." Oh, I knew. I knew exactly how Victoria was. At 32, she'd mastered the art of making me feel tiny, all while keeping up that perfect family facade. Growing up, she got the best of everything. The big bedroom, brand new clothes, an expensive university. Me? Hand-me-downs and community college. She got praised for average achievements. I got criticized for excellence. "Sit down, Rachel," my father Gregory ordered, his voice cutting. "You're making a scene." I sat, swallowing the protest that clawed at my throat. This dinner was supposed to be a celebration of Victoria's latest big business deal, something my parents had, of course, helped finance. When I dared to ask them for a loan to start my graphic design business 3 years prior, they'd just laughed in my face, telling me to be realistic. The whole evening dragged on. Conversation flowed around me, ignoring my very existence. Victoria gloated about her new Mercedes. Kenneth rattled on about his promotion at the bank. My parents glowed with pride, showering them with questions and congratulations. When I tried to mention the major client I'd just landed, a $50,000 contract, my mother simply cut me off. "That's nice, dear. Kenneth, tell us more about your bonus." By the time dessert arrived, I was completely numb, retreated deep inside myself. This was my familiar role, my place in the family, the outsider, the charity case, the one they kept around just to feel good about themselves. Then, the waiter approached and my stomach plummeted. He placed the heavy leather folder, the check, directly in front of me. I just stared at it, utterly bewildered. "What's this?" I managed to ask. Victoria's laugh was sharp, triumphant. "Oh, didn't we mention? You're paying tonight. Consider it your contribution to the family, since you're always taking and never giving." Taking? The word felt strangled in my throat. "I've never asked you for anything." Patricia started ticking items off her manicured fingers. "The roof over your head growing up, the food, the clothes. We give you everything, Rachel. The least you can do is buy us dinner." My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I opened the folder. The total made my vision swim, $3,270. They'd ordered the most expensive wines, multiple appetizers, premium steaks, lobster tails. Kenneth, just because he could, had ordered 3 desserts. "I can't afford this," I whispered, the words barely audible. "Of course you can," Victoria purred, a sickening sweetness in her tone. "You just told us about your big client, remember? $50,000, wasn't it? This is nothing to you now." The brutal truth was that $50,000 was spread over 6 months of work, and most of it was already earmarked for business expenses, rent, and the student loans my family had refused to help me with. This single dinner would absolutely obliterate my savings. But I couldn't make another scene. Couldn't give them more ammunition to label me ungrateful, difficult, dramatic. With trembling fingers, I pulled out my credit card. The waiter whisked it away, and I forced myself to smile, to sip my water, to pretend this wasn't absolutely devastating me. Victoria was already chattering about their upcoming vacation to Tuscany. My parents were joining them, of course. No one asked if I wanted to come. They never did. When the waiter returned with my card and receipt, I signed with numb fingers. $3,000, $270. For the privilege of being humiliated by the very people who were supposed to love me. Well, that was lovely, Patricia chirped, dabbing her lips with a napkin. Same time next month. Next month. They expected this to be a regular thing. My mouth opened, a protest rising, a desperate plea to finally say enough is enough. Just a moment, please. A voice, clear and commanding, cut through the noise. Everyone fell silent. It was Grandma Dorothy. She stood at her end of the table, 78 years old, her silver hair perfectly styled, her posture ramrod straight. Something in her expression made my chest tighten with a strange mix of fear and hope. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Grandma Dorothy had always been different from the rest of them. While my parents and siblings treated me like an obligation, she was the one who showed up at my school plays, who remembered my birthday, who actually asked about my dreams. She was also unfathomably wealthy, a self-made billionaire who'd built a pharmaceutical empire from nothing. Lately, though, she'd been quieter, just watching our family gatherings with an intensity that always made me wonder what was going on in her head. "Mother, what is it?" Patricia asked, a whine of irritation creeping into her voice. We were just about to leave. "Sit down, all of you." Grandma Dorothy's voice carried an authority that made even my father straighten in his chair. "I have something to say, and you're going to listen." Victoria rolled her eyes, but stayed put. Kenneth fiddled with his phone under the table. My parents exchanged confused glances. Grandma Dorothy's gaze swept across each of them, finally settling on me. A flicker passed through her eyes, sadness, maybe, or deep disappointment in everyone else. "I've been watching this family for years," she began, her voice steady but chilling. "Watching how you treat Rachel. How you've always treated her." "Mother, really?" Patricia protested, aghast. "This isn't the time. Be quiet." The command was so sharp, so unexpected, that my mother actually snapped her mouth shut. "I'm 78 years old. And I've spent the past few months thinking about my legacy, about where my money should go when I'm gone." The table went absolutely silent. My father's fork clinked loudly as he set it down. Victoria's smug expression dissolved. "We all know how this works," Grandma Dorothy continued. "The bulk of my estate goes to Patricia, then distributed among the grandchildren. That's what the current will says." I watched Victoria's face light up with naked greed. She'd been counting on that inheritance for years, planning lavish purchases, making investments based on money she didn't even have yet. But Grandma Dorothy announced, "I've had my lawyer draw up a new will." She pulled an envelope from her purse, pristine and official. "Signed and notarized yesterday." The silence in the room was suffocating. "You can't be serious," Kenneth choked out, finally looking up from his phone. "You're changing your will because of what?" "A stupid joke." "A joke?" Grandma Dorothy's laugh was brittle, laced with bitter scorn. "I've watched you all mock and belittle Rachel for over 2 decades. I've watched you exclude her, humiliate her, treat her like she's less than human. And tonight, you made her pay for your excess while you all laughed about it. We were just having fun." Victoria protested, her voice wavering. "Fun?" Grandma Dorothy repeated the word as if it tasted foul. "You think cruelty is fun? You think making someone feel worthless is entertainment?" My heart was pounding so hard, I was sure everyone could hear it. Grandma Dorothy slowly, deliberately, walked around the table until she stood right beside me. Her hand settled gently on my shoulder. "Rachel is the only one in this family who's shown true character," she declared. "She's worked for everything she has, built a business from nothing with no help from any of you. She's kind, talented, and resilient, despite your best efforts to break her spirit." "Mother, you're being dramatic," Gregory muttered, but there was no conviction in his tone. "Am I?" Grandma Dorothy's eyebrows arched. "Patricia, when was the last time you asked Rachel about her life? Really asked, and actually listened to the answer?" My mother's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "Kenneth, have you ever congratulated your sister on her accomplishments? Ever acknowledged her success?" My brother stared fixedly at his plate. "Victoria, have you spent even one day treating Rachel like family instead of a servant?" My sister's face flushed a fiery red with a mixture of anger and raw embarrassment. Grandma Dorothy looked at each of them, her disappointment a tangible force. "You've all failed spectacularly. You took in a little girl who'd lost everything, and instead of giving her love and support, you've spent 22 years making her pay for the kindness you never actually showed." The weight of her words settled over the table like a heavy, suffocating blanket. Other diners had long since stopped pretending not to listen. The waitstaff hovered at a respectful distance, sensing the profound drama unfolding. "So, here's what's going to happen," Grandma Dorothy said, her voice gaining formidable strength. "My entire estate. Every dollar, every property, every investment. It's all going to Rachel." The explosion was immediate. "What?" Victoria shrieked, leaping to her feet. "You can't do that. That's not fair." Kenneth slammed his hand down on the table. "Mother, think about what you're saying," Patricia pleaded, tears already welling up. "You're talking about billions of dollars. Rachel isn't even really family." "Stop." Grandma Dorothy's command silenced them again, instantly. "Rachel is more family than any of you have ever been. She's earned this, not through blood, but through character. Through being a better person than all of you combined." I sat there, utterly frozen, unable to process any of it. Billions of dollars. Grandma Dorothy's entire fortune. It was impossible, unreal, too enormous for my mind to grasp. "You're being manipulated," Gregory said desperately, his voice cracking. "Rachel must have done something." "Rachel has done nothing but survive your abuse." Grandma Dorothy cut him off, her voice like steel. "And that ends tonight." She pulled out her phone and made a call, her eyes never leaving my stunned family. "Thomas? It's Dorothy." "Yes." "File the new will immediately. Make sure it's ironclad and prepare the trust documents for Rachel." My family's faces were a kaleidoscope of shock, fury, and outright disbelief. Victoria looked like she might genuinely faint. Kenneth's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. My parents seemed to age a decade in seconds. "This isn't over," Victoria hissed at me, her eyes narrowed. "We'll contest it. We'll fight you in court." "Try it," Grandma Dorothy said calmly, a dangerous glint in her eyes. "I've made sure everything is completely legal, and I'm of sound mind, as a medical evaluation from this morning confirms." She had planned this. Every single, intricate detail. The explosion that followed was unlike anything I had ever witnessed. Victoria actually lunged across the table, her face contorted with pure, unadulterated rage. Kenneth grabbed her arm, but his own anger was barely contained. My parents sat there in stunned silence, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. "You manipulative little bitch." Victoria snarled at me, pure venom. "You planned this. You've been playing the victim this whole time." "Enough." Grandma Dorothy stepped between us, a formidable barrier. "Rachel has done nothing wrong. She didn't even know about this until now." It was true. I was still reeling, my mind unable to fully grasp what had just happened. Billions of dollars. Grandma Dorothy's entire estate. Everything she'd built over her lifetime. "Why are you doing this?" Patricia's voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. "I'm your daughter. Your blood. And you should be ashamed of how you've acted," Grandma Dorothy replied, her voice softer now, but still firm. "I gave you every advantage in life, Patricia. Education, opportunities. And you took all of that and learned nothing about compassion or kindness. Instead, you passed your cruelty down to your own children." Gregory tried a different approach, a desperate plea. "Let's be reasonable. We can work this out. Maybe split the estate?" "There is nothing to work out," Grandma Dorothy said, finality in every syllable. "The decision is made. My lawyers have everything in order. The trust is established. Rachel will receive everything when I pass, with immediate access to certain accounts starting tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" The word hung in the air. This wasn't some vague future promise. This was real. Immediate. Happening. Kenneth leaned forward, his voice low and threatening. "You're making a huge mistake. Rachel doesn't know how to handle that kind of money. She'll blow through it in a year." "Rachel has built a successful business on nothing," Grandma Dorothy interrupted, her voice sharp. "She's more financially responsible at 27 than any of you have ever been. She's had to be, because you never helped her." I found my voice, shaky and uncertain. "Grandma, I don't understand." "Why no?" She turned to me then, and her expression softened, heartbreakingly. "Because I've watched you suffer long enough, sweetheart." A beat. "I'm dying." The world tilted. "What?" The word barely escaped my lips. "Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. I have maybe 6 months, probably less." She said it so calmly, so matter-of-factly, but I saw the profound pain beneath her composure. "I found out 3 months ago. I've spent that time getting my affairs in order, making sure my legacy goes to someone who truly deserves it." Tears blurred my vision. "Grandma." Dorothy was dying. The one person who'd ever truly loved me was leaving. "Oh, don't cry, Rachel," she whispered, pulling me into a hug. I breathed in her familiar perfume, lilac and vanilla. This isn't sad, sweetheart. This is justice. Around us, the restaurant had gone completely silent. Even the kitchen noise had died down. Everyone was watching this family implode in real time. You can't be serious about this, Patricia tried again, desperation making her voice shrill. Mother, please, think about your grandchildren. Think about the family legacy. I am thinking about it, Grandma Dorothy said, her gaze unyielding. That's exactly why I'm doing this. The family legacy should be compassion, hard work, and integrity. Rachel embodies all of that. The rest of you embody greed, cruelty, and entitlement. Victoria's hands were shaking uncontrollably. We'll sue. We'll prove you're not in your right mind. Good luck with that. Grandma Dorothy's smile was sharp, almost predatory. I have medical evaluations, psychological assessments, and testimony from dozens of witnesses about your treatment of Rachel over the years. My lawyer has been documenting everything for months. She had planned this. Every detail, every contingency. Protecting me, even as her own time ran short. I want to go home, I whispered, my voice small. Of course, Grandma Dorothy kept her arm around me. Thomas is outside with the car. He'll take us both to my place. We have a lot to discuss. As we turned to leave, Kenneth, purple-faced, suddenly blocked our path. This isn't fair. She's not even really one of us. Move. Grandma Dorothy's voice was ice, absolutely glacial. Or I'll have security remove you. He stepped aside, but the hatred blazing in his eyes made me flinch. We walked through the restaurant in silence, every single eye following us. The cool Seattle air hit my face as we stepped outside, and I gulped it down, trying to steady myself. A sleek black car waited at the curb. Thomas, Grandma Dorothy's driver of 30 years, opened the door with a quiet, knowing smile. Miss Rachel, welcome. Thomas knows everything, Grandma Dorothy said as we slid into the back seat. He's been helping me plan this for weeks. The car pulled away from the restaurant, leaving my family, my former family, standing on the sidewalk in shock. Through the rear window, I saw Victoria screaming something, her face twisted with a rage so ugly it was barely human. Kenneth was already on his phone, probably calling a lawyer. My parents stood together, looking utterly lost and broken. I should have felt something then. Guilt, maybe, or fear. But all I felt was a profound, numb exhaustion, strangely mixed with an overwhelming sense of freedom. Are you really dying? I asked Grandma Dorothy, my voice small, almost childlike. Yes, she said, taking my hand. Her skin was paper thin, but her grip was surprisingly strong. But I'm not afraid. I've lived a full life, Rachel. Built an empire, raised a family, made my mark. Now I get to ensure that everything I've worked for goes to someone worthy. I don't know if I can do this, I admitted, a wave of panic washing over me. I don't know how to be rich. I don't know how to run your companies. You'll learn, she said, her voice confident, unwavering. You're smart, hardworking, and you have good instincts. And you'll have an excellent team to guide you. I've made sure of that. The city lights blurred past the window as we drove toward her sprawling estate in Madison Park. What happens now? Now, Grandma Dorothy squeezed my hand, a promise in her touch. Now we prepare you for your new life, and we make absolutely certain that your family can never hurt you again. The next morning, I woke up in one of Grandma Dorothy's breathtaking guest rooms, momentarily disoriented by the silk sheets and the panoramic view of Lake Washington. Then, the memories crashed back. The restaurant. The bill. The announcement. Everything. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since I turned it back on. 43 missed calls from Victoria. 27 from my mother. 16 from Kenneth. Dozens of texts, ranging from pleading to outright threatening. I scrolled through them with a strange, detached calm. You're being selfish. Think about the family. Patricia. I'll destroy you in court. You won't see a penny. Victoria. We need to talk. This can still be fixed. Gregory. Grandma's clearly not thinking straight. Help us get her evaluated. Kenneth. I set the phone down and walked to the window. Grandma Dorothy's estate sprawled across 3 acres of prime Seattle real estate. The morning sun glinted off the lake, sailboats already dotting the water. This was mine now. Or it would be soon. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Miss Rachel, breakfast is ready, and Miss Dorothy would like to see you in the study. I found Grandma Dorothy sitting behind an enormous mahogany desk, looking surprisingly energetic despite yesterday's revelations about her health. Thomas stood nearby, and a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit sat across from her. Rachel, this is Walter, my attorney, Grandma Dorothy said, a hint of steel in her voice. We need to go over some things. Walter stood, shaking my hand with a firm, professional grip. Miss Rachel, it's a pleasure. Your grandmother has spoken very highly of you. I sat down, feeling like I was trapped in a surreal dream. Walter opened a leather portfolio and began explaining the intricate details of the trust, the companies, the investments. Numbers that seemed utterly impossible swam before my eyes. $3 billion in liquid assets, $5 billion in property and investments, stakes in pharmaceutical companies, real estate developments, tech startups. The immediate access accounts activate today, Walter explained, his voice even. $5 million for your personal use while the trust is being finalized. $5 million for immediate use. I felt dizzy. There's more, Grandma Dorothy said, her eyes sharp, cutting through my shock. Your family will try to contest this. They'll claim undue influence, diminished capacity, anything they can think of. We need to be prepared. What can they actually do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Walter leaned forward. Legally? Not much. Miss Dorothy has documentation proving her sound mind, including evaluations from 3 separate doctors. The will is ironclad. However, they can make the process difficult. Drag it out in court. Create negative publicity. Let them try, Grandma Dorothy said firmly, a dangerous glint in her eyes. I've been documenting their treatment of Rachel for years. Every cruel comment, every exclusion, every incident of financial abuse. If they want a court battle, I'll bury them with evidence. My phone buzzed again, a new call. I reached for it, then Grandma Dorothy said, There's something else you need to know, Rachel. Her tone, suddenly soft and solemn, made me tense. Your adoption wasn't quite what you think it was. The room seemed to tilt beneath me. What do you mean? She pulled a slender folder from her desk drawer, sliding it across to me. When Patricia and Gregory adopted you, they received a substantial sum of money. $750,000 to be exact. It was meant to cover your care, your education, everything you'd need growing up. I stared at the documents in the folder. Bank statements. Transfer records. They took money for adopting me? From a trust set up by your birth parents, Grandma Dorothy confirmed, her voice laced with sadness. They died in a car accident when you were 5. They'd established a trust to ensure you were cared for. Patricia and Gregory were approved as adoptive parents and given access to those funds. My hands shook uncontrollably as I flipped through the papers. $750,000. And I'd worn hand-me-downs, gone to community college on student loans, been told the family couldn't afford to help me. They spent it all, I whispered, the account statements flashing before my eyes. Vacations, cars, Victoria's private school tuition, Kenneth's college fund. They spent my money on everyone but me. Yes, Grandma Dorothy said quietly. I only discovered this myself 2 years ago. I've been investigating since then, gathering every shred of evidence. That's theft, Rachel. They stole from a child. The betrayal. It cut deeper than any insult, any favoritism, any casual cruelty I'd ever experienced. This wasn't just them being mean. They had profited from my deepest loss, taking money meant for my care and using it to spoil their biological children, all while treating me like a burdensome charity case. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, my voice raw. Because I needed to be sure. Needed all the documentation to be perfect and legal. And because, she paused, looking older suddenly, because I knew that once you learned the truth, there would be no going back. Your relationship with them, toxic as it was, would be over completely. She was right. Any tiny part of me that had clung to hope, that had wondered if maybe I was just too sensitive or ungrateful, died in that moment. They hadn't just been cruel. They'd been criminals. What do I do? I felt utterly lost, overwhelmed by the magnitude of it all. You let me handle it, Grandma Dorothy said, her eyes resolute. Walter has already filed a civil suit against Patricia and Gregory for misappropriation of trust funds. With interest over 22 years, they owe you approximately $2.3 million. My phone exploded with calls again. This time, it was my father. Answer it, Grandma Dorothy said, her voice sharp. Put it on speaker. Let's hear what he has to say. With shaking hands, I accepted the call. Rachel? Gregory's voice was desperate, pleading. Rachel, please. We need to talk. Your grandmother isn't thinking clearly. She seems perfectly clear to me, I said, my voice steadier than I felt it had any right to be. This is insane. You can't possibly think you deserve her entire fortune. You've been with us for 22 years, and suddenly you turn on us the moment money is involved. The moment money is involved? I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. You mean like the $750,000 you took for adopting me? The money you spent on everyone except me? Silence. Then, I don't know what lies she's been telling you. Bank records don't lie, Dad. The word dad felt vile on my tongue. Walter has all the documentation. You stole from me. You both did. Patricia's voice came through the phone, shrill with panic. That money was for raising you. For housing you, feeding you. You gave me hand-me-downs and made me pay my own way through college. I snapped, years of suppressed anger erupting. Meanwhile, Victoria got designer clothes and a full ride to a private university. Kenneth got a new car at 16. I got nothing. You're being ungrateful, Gregory tried, weakly. We gave you a home. You gave me a prison, I said, the words powerful, liberating. You made me feel worthless every single day. And you did it while spending money that was meant for me. We'll fight this. Patricia threatened. We'll take you to court. Please do, Grandma Dorothy cut in, her voice low and dangerous. I'd love to see you explain the financial records to a judge. Explain how you took money meant for a grieving 5-year-old and spent it on luxury vacations. The call ended abruptly. They'd hung up, probably to call their own lawyer. I felt Walter's hand on my shoulder. Miss Rachel, I know this is overwhelming, but you need to understand, you hold all the cards here. They have no legal ground to stand on. They'll try anyway, I said, knowing them. Of course they will, Grandma Dorothy agreed. But they'll lose. And when they do, you'll never have to see them again. Just 3 days later, the story exploded across the media. Billionaire disinherits family for adopted granddaughter, screamed the headlines. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with reporters desperate for a statement. I'd moved into Grandma Dorothy's estate temporarily. I couldn't bear to be in my apartment where my family knew the address. Thomas had discreetly retrieved my things, and I was now living in this surreal bubble of luxury and chaos. The public reaction was wildly divided. Some praised Grandma Dorothy for rewarding character over blood. Others, however, immediately branded me a manipulative gold digger who had seduced an elderly woman out of her fortune. The comment sections were brutal. She must have been sleeping with the old woman's lawyer or something. Gold digger alert. This girl knew exactly what she was doing. Some championed us. Good for Dorothy. Family isn't blood, it's how you treat people. Others were darkly prophetic. That adopted girl is going to blow through billions in a year. Watch. I tried to ignore it all, but the words burrowed under my skin. Was I wrong to accept this? Should I have refused Grandma Dorothy's incredible gift? Stop reading those, Grandma Dorothy said, finding me hunched over my laptop in the library. She looked frilier than she had days ago, the cancer clearly progressing. People will always have opinions, Rachel. Let them talk. They're calling me terrible things, I confessed, my voice tight. They called me terrible things when I built my first company, she replied, settling into the chair beside me. Said I was too aggressive, too masculine, too ambitious. That a woman couldn't possibly succeed in pharmaceuticals. I proved them wrong. She took my hand, her grip weaker now, but her resolve unbroken. You'll prove them wrong too, Rachel. Not by defending yourself, but by being exactly who you are, kind, hardworking, principled. That afternoon, Walter arrived with news that made my blood run cold. His expression was grim, and I knew it wasn't good. Victoria's legal team has found something, he started. Or rather, they claim to have found something. They're alleging that you forged documents related to your business, specifically contracts with clients. They're trying to paint you as dishonest, someone capable of manipulating Dorothy. That's insane. I cried. All my contracts are legitimate. We know that, Walter conceded, but they're filing a motion to delay the will proceedings pending an investigation. It's a stall tactic, but it could work. Grandma Dorothy's hand slammed down on the desk, startling us both. Despite her growing frailty, anger gave her an incredible surge of strength. Absolutely not, Walter. File an emergency motion to expedite. I want this settled before. She didn't finish the sentence, but we all knew what she meant, before she died. Dorothy, you should rest, Walter began, concerned. I'll rest when this is done, she snapped, her eyes blazing. My granddaughter is being attacked by vultures masquerading as family. We end this now. Walter nodded, pulling out his phone to make calls. Grandma Dorothy turned to me, her eyes fierce. Rachel, I need you to do something for me. Anything, I whispered. I'm holding a press conference tomorrow. I'm going to tell the truth, all of it. About the stolen money, the abuse, everything. But I need you to be there with me. The world needs to see you, hear from you directly. Terror gripped me. I can't. I'll say something wrong. You'll be perfect, she said firmly. Because you'll tell the truth. That's all you need to do. That night, I barely slept again. I kept rehearsing what I might say, then abandoning it. How do you sum up 22 years of pain in a few minutes? How do you make strangers understand? The press conference was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon at Grandma Dorothy's downtown office. When Thomas drove us there, the media presence was overwhelming. Cameras everywhere, reporters shouting questions, a throng of onlookers documenting everything on their phones. The conference room was packed. Cameras rolled, lights were blindingly bright, and the air crackled with anticipation. Grandma Dorothy sat beside me at a long table, Walter on her other side. She looked small, yes, but utterly unbreakable. Thank you for coming, she began, her voice surprisingly strong, carrying throughout the room. She laid it all out. The meticulous documentation of the abuse, the stolen trust fund money, years of emotional and financial manipulation. She showed bank records, medical evaluations proving her sound mind, testimony from witnesses who'd seen their cruelty. It was methodical, devastating, and absolutely irrefutable. Some have suggested Rachel manipulated me, Grandma Dorothy said, her gaze sweeping the room. The truth is the opposite. My biological family manipulated her. They took a grieving 5-year-old child and used her as a punching bag for their own inadequacies. They stole from her, belittled her, and made her feel worthless. Despite all of that, Rachel built a life, a successful business. She became kind, compassionate, hardworking, everything they are not. Then, she gestured to me. Rachel would like to say a few words. My mouth went completely dry. Every single eye in the room was on me. I could feel the judgment, the curiosity, the skepticism. I cleared my throat, forcing words out. I don't know what to say that my grandmother hasn't already said. I never wanted this attention. I never wanted to be rich or famous or involved in legal battles. My voice steadied as I continued, finding a strange strength. I just wanted a family that loved me. I wanted parents who cared if I was okay. Siblings who celebrated my successes instead of mocking them. I wanted to belong somewhere. I looked directly into the cameras, my gaze unflinching. I know some of you think I'm a gold digger, that I manipulated a dying woman for money. But I didn't even know about the inheritance until that night at the restaurant. I didn't know my grandmother was sick. I didn't know about the stolen trust fund money. All I knew was that once again, my family was humiliating me and demanding I pay for the privilege. Tears threatened, but I pushed them back, my voice gaining power. My grandmother is giving me her fortune because she believes in who I am, not because I asked for it. And I'm going to honor that trust by being exactly who she sees, someone who builds things, helps people, and refuses to be cruel just because it's easier. The questions came fast and furious after that, reporters shouting, cameras flashing. But Walter fielded them expertly, and Grandma Dorothy sat beside me, her hand finding mine under the table, a silent anchor. As we were wrapping up, the doors burst open. Victoria. She stormed in, security scrambling to stop her, but she was already screaming. This is all lies. She's brainwashed you all. Victoria's makeup was smeared, her designer dress wrinkled. She looked utterly unhinged. I'm the real victim here. That adopted brat has stolen my inheritance. The cameras swiveled to her, capturing every second of her spectacular meltdown. Miss Victoria, a reporter called out, what about the allegations that your parents stole trust fund money meant for Rachel? That money was ours. Victoria shrieked, totally losing it. We earned it by raising her ungrateful ass. You earned $750,000 for treating a child like garbage, another reporter shot back. Victoria realized her mistake too late. The cameras had caught everything. Her raw admission, her unbridled rage, her complete lack of remorse. Get her out of here, Walter said to security, his voice sharp and decisive, as Victoria was escorted out, still screaming threats. I watched the reporters, a frenzy of typing on their phones. The narrative had just shifted, dramatically. Victoria had given them the villain they needed, and it definitely wasn't me. Grandma Dorothy squeezed my hand. Well, she said quietly, a wry smile playing on her lips, I don't think we could have planned that better if we tried. Despite everything, I almost smiled too. Victoria had destroyed herself, and she'd done it on camera for the entire world to see. The video of Victoria's meltdown went viral within hours. By evening, it had been viewed over 10 million times. News outlets played it on loop, dissecting every word, every unhinged expression. Social media exploded with commentary. Did she really just admit they took money for raising an adopted kid? This family is toxic. Rachel deserves everything. Victoria just destroyed her own case in under 60 seconds. Brilliant. That look on her face when she realized what she said, priceless. Public opinion shifted overnight. What had been a divided conversation became a landslide of support for me and utter condemnation for my family. Memes spread, commentary videos analyzed the situation, legal experts weighed in, all agreeing that Victoria's admission had essentially torpedoed any chance of contesting the will. I watched it all from Grandma Dorothy's study, still trying to process the sheer magnitude of it. Walter sat across from me, looking incredibly pleased. Their legal case just collapsed, he announced, a satisfied smile on his face. Victoria's admission that they earned the trust fund money by raising you is essentially a confession to misappropriation of funds. Combined with the documentation we already have, they have no leg to stand on. What happens now? I asked, my voice a little numb. Now, their lawyers will try to do damage control, but it's too late, Walter said. The court hearing is in 3 days. I'd be shocked if the judge doesn't rule in our favor immediately. He paused, his expression growing more serious. There's also the criminal aspect. The district attorney's office has reached out. They're considering fraud charges against Patricia and Gregory. Criminal charges. My parents. They could go to prison. Grandma Dorothy entered the study then, moving slowly with Thomas supporting her arm. She'd declined rapidly since the press conference. The effort had clearly drained her reserves. But her eyes were still sharp, still blazing. Don't look so worried, she said, settling into her chair. They made their choices. Now they face the consequences. They're still my parents, I said quietly, the words aching. Or they were supposed to be. They were never your parents, Grandma Dorothy said firmly, cutting through my pain. Parents protect their children. Love them. Support them. What Patricia and Gregory did was exploitation. Pure and simple. My phone buzzed. Another message. This one made my blood run cold. I know where you live now. This isn't over. I showed it to Walter, who immediately made a call. I'm getting a restraining order filed today and increasing security at the estate. She's desperate, Grandma Dorothy observed, her eyes narrowing. Desperate people do dangerous things. She was right. Over the next 2 days, Victoria's behavior became increasingly erratic. She showed up at my old apartment building, screaming at tenants. She posted long, rambling rants on social media, each one more unhinged than the last. She claimed I'd used witchcraft to manipulate Grandma Dorothy, that I was part of a conspiracy, that she was the real victim of elder abuse. Each post only made things worse for her. The public watched her self-destruct in real time, and any sympathy that might have existed for her evaporated entirely. Kenneth tried a different approach. He went on a local news program, presenting himself as the reasonable middle ground. Look, he said earnestly to the camera, I think there were mistakes made on both sides. Yes, maybe we weren't as welcoming to Rachel as we should have been, but to cut the entire family out over childhood disagreements? That seems extreme. The interviewer wasn't buying it. Mr. Kenneth, are you aware that your parents received $750,000 intended for Rachel's care, which they allegedly spent on your education and your sister's? Kenneth's carefully constructed composure cracked. That money was for the whole family. Rachel benefited from it, too. She wore hand-me-downs while your sister got designer clothes, the interviewer countered. She took out loans for community college while you attended a private university, fully funded. How exactly did she benefit? Kenneth ended the interview early, but the damage was done. The public saw right through him. My father tried yet another tactic, appealing to sympathy. He gave a tearful interview about how he loved me like a daughter, how this was breaking his heart, how families should forgive each other. We made mistakes, Gregory said, his voice breaking. What parent hasn't? But to be cut off completely, to be accused of theft, it's destroying us. Patricia can barely get out of bed. Kenneth's marriage is suffering. Victoria's having a breakdown. All because we weren't perfect. The interviewer, the very same one who had dismantled Kenneth, showed no mercy. Mr. Gregory, you're describing what you did as not being perfect. But investigators have documented years of emotional abuse, financial exploitation, and systematic exclusion of Rachel from family activities. This goes beyond imperfection. That's not abuse, he insisted, clearly rattled. That's just family dynamics. Every family has issues. Every family doesn't steal $750,000 from a child, the interviewer stated flatly. My father walked out too. But my mother's approach was the most calculated. Patricia hired a PR firm and gave a carefully crafted interview to a sympathetic journalist. She wore a simple dress, minimal makeup, positioned herself in soft, flattering lighting. She cried at all the right moments. "I loved Rachel from the moment we brought her home," Patricia said, dabbing her eyes. "She was this beautiful, broken little girl who'd lost everything. I wanted to give her a family, a home, love. Yes, we were stricter with her than with our biological children. Maybe that was wrong, but we were trying to prepare her for a hard world. We knew she'd face challenges as an adopted child, and we wanted her to be strong." The journalist ate it up. "And the money?" "That money was meant for her care, and that's what we used it for," she insisted. "Housing, food, utilities. Raising a child is expensive. Maybe we should have documented every expense. But we were a family, not a business." She looked directly into the camera, a practiced tear tracing a path down her cheek. "Rachel, if you're watching, please know I love you. I always have. Can we please just talk, without lawyers, without the media? Just mother and daughter." I watched the interview with Grandma Dorothy and Walter. When it ended, I felt sick to my stomach. "She's good," Walter admitted, a grudging respect in his voice. "This is the most sympathetic they've looked since this started." "She's a liar," I said flatly, my voice devoid of emotion. "She never loved me. This is just another manipulation." "I know," Grandma Dorothy said. "But some people will believe her. The question is, do you care?" Did I? I thought about it. A week ago, I might have cared desperately. I'd have wanted everyone to know the absolute truth, to see Patricia for what she really was. But now? No. "No," I said, a sense of peace settling over me. "I don't care what strangers think. The people who matter know the truth." Grandma Dorothy smiled. "Good girl." The court hearing arrived on a gray Seattle morning. The courthouse was surrounded by a frenzied media circus. Protesters held signs, both for and against me. Curiosity seekers hoped for a glimpse of the drama. Walter had arranged for us to enter through a private entrance, but I could still hear the roar of the crowd outside. Grandma Dorothy looked frail in her wheelchair. We'd finally convinced her to use one, but her spine was still straight, her head held high. I held her hand as we entered the hushed courtroom. My family was already there. Patricia, Gregory, Kenneth, and Victoria sat at the defendant's table with their team of lawyers. Patricia had maintained that soft, sympathetic appearance from her interview. Gregory looked tired, utterly defeated. Kenneth wouldn't meet my eyes. But Victoria? Victoria stared at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Morrison, entered, and everyone rose. "This is a hearing regarding the will of Dorothy Hayes and the contest filed by Patricia Hayes and family," Judge Morrison began, her voice crisp. "I've reviewed the documentation submitted by both parties. Counsel, your opening statements." The family's lawyer, a slick man named Robert, went first. He argued that Grandma Dorothy had been unduly influenced, that her illness had impaired her judgment, that the will should be set aside in favor of the previous version. Then Walter stood. He didn't argue. He didn't plead. He simply presented facts. Bank records showing the stolen trust fund money. Medical evaluations from 3 separate doctors confirming Grandma Dorothy's sound mind. Testimony from business associates about her sharp mental acuity. Documentation of the abuse I'd suffered. Photos, recordings, witness statements. And finally, Victoria's viral video confession. "Your Honor," Walter concluded, his voice unwavering, "this is not a case of undue influence. This is a case of a woman choosing to leave her estate to someone who deserves it, and a family angry that their victim has finally escaped their control." Patricia's lawyer tried to counter, but Judge Morrison cut him off mid-sentence. "I've seen enough," she declared, her voice firm, leaving no room for doubt. "The evidence is overwhelming. Miss Dorothy Hayes was clearly of sound mind when she executed her new will. The documentation of abuse is extensive and credible. And the admission by Victoria Hayes that the family earned money meant for Rachel essentially confirms the allegations of financial exploitation." My heart began to pound, a frantic drum in my chest. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, her gaze sweeping over my family, the behavior exhibited by the contesting parties during these proceedings, including threats, harassment, and public defamation, only reinforces that Miss Dorothy's decision was correct. A family that truly loved Rachel would never have treated her this way, before or after the will change. Victoria stood up, unable to contain herself. "This is bullshit," she screamed. "You can't just sit down." Judge Morrison commanded, her voice like thunder. or I'll hold you in contempt." Victoria sat, but her fury was palpable, a live thing radiating from her. "I'm ruling in favor of the will as executed," Judge Morrison declared. "The contest is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm ordering Patricia and Gregory Hayes to pay restitution for the misappropriated trust funds. $750,000 plus interest over 22 years, totaling approximately $2.3 million. They have 90 days to pay in full." The courtroom erupted. Patricia collapsed in her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Gregory looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Kenneth buried his head in his hands. Victoria started screaming obscenities until bailiffs escorted her out, still fighting. I sat there, frozen, unable to process that it was over. We'd won. Completely, decisively, irrevocably. Grandma Dorothy squeezed my hand. "It's done, sweetheart," she whispered. "You're free." Media swarmed us as we left the courthouse, a shouting, flashing frenzy. But Walter and Thomas created a human barrier around us. I heard the questions being shouted. How did I feel? What would I do with the money? Did I have a message for my family? But I didn't answer. I just helped Grandma Dorothy into the car and let Thomas drive us away. Back at the estate, Grandma Dorothy was utterly exhausted, but her eyes held a deep, quiet satisfaction. "I can die happy now," she said. The words hit me like a physical blow. "Don't say that," I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. "Please." "Oh, Rachel." She cupped my face with her thin hands, her touch featherlight. "I'm not afraid. I got to see justice done. I got to know my fortune will be used for good. That's more than most people get." Over the next 3 weeks, I watched Grandma Dorothy fade. She slipped in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes lost in cherished memories. I stayed by her side, holding her hand, telling her about my plans for the foundation I wanted to start, something to help adopted children who were being abused or exploited, just like I had been. "That's perfect," she murmured during one of her clearer moments, a faint smile on her lips. "Help others like you break the cycle." "I will," I promised, my voice thick with emotion. "I'll make you proud. You already have." Her smile was peaceful, complete. "You survived them, Rachel. You stayed kind when they were cruel. You worked hard when they tried to break you. You're everything I hoped you'd be." She died on a Tuesday morning, with me holding her hand and the sun streaming through the window, painting the room in soft gold. Her last words, whispered so softly I almost missed them, were, "Thank you for being my real family." I stayed with her for a long time after, crying not just for her, but for the woman who had saved me, who had loved me, who had given me a future. The only grandmother I'd ever truly had. The funeral was private, just me, Thomas, Walter, and a few of Grandma Dorothy's closest friends. My family wasn't invited, though Patricia tried to crash it and was politely, but firmly, turned away by security. In the weeks that followed, the full transfer of assets was completed. I was now the sole heir to a $3 billion fortune. The number was still incomprehensible, a mind-boggling sum, but I was fiercely determined to honor Grandma Dorothy's legacy. The first thing I did was establish the Dorothy Hayes Foundation for Adopted Children. Not because it sounded good or made me look charitable, but because I knew firsthand how many kids were trapped in situations just like mine. The foundation would provide legal support, counseling, emergency housing, and educational funding for adopted children suffering abuse or exploitation. The second thing I did was hire an excellent management team for Grandma Dorothy's companies. I wasn't ready to run billion-dollar corporations overnight, but I could learn. I attended every meeting, asked questions, studied late into the night. Slowly, piece by piece, I began to understand the vast empire she'd built. My family's downfall was swift and brutally poetic. Unable to pay the $2.3 million in restitution, Patricia and Gregory were forced to sell their house, their cars, everything of value. They moved into a tiny apartment in a rough neighborhood, ironic considering they'd always looked down on people they deemed beneath them. Gregory faced fraud charges for the trust fund theft and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Patricia received 2 years. Kenneth, who had benefited from the stolen money through his education, was required to pay back his portion, approximately $400,000. His marriage collapsed under the financial strain, and last I heard, he was working 2 jobs, barely scraping by to make the payments. But Victoria's fate was, perhaps, the most satisfying. Her viral meltdown had utterly destroyed any credibility she had. Her husband divorced her, taking their house and most of their assets. She'd invested heavily in a restaurant venture that failed spectacularly, leaving her deep in debt. The private investigator she'd hired to dig up dirt on me was now suing her for unpaid fees. She tried to write a tell-all book, but publishers rejected it after fact-checkers found it full of lies. She even attempted to start a YouTube channel, but the comments were so brutal she deleted it within days. She'd even tried to reconcile with me, not out of genuine remorse, but out of desperate hope I'd give her money. I'd read her email once. "Rachel, I know we had our differences, but we're still sisters. Family forgives family. I'm struggling right now, and I know you're doing well. Maybe we could meet for coffee, talk about the past, and build a future together." I deleted it without responding. 6 months after Grandma Dorothy's death, I stood in the Foundation's new headquarters, a beautiful building in downtown Seattle, dedicated to helping children just like I'd been. The walls were covered with photos of kids we'd already helped, stories of escape and new beginnings. Thomas stood beside me, having accepted a position as the Foundation's operations director. "Miss Dorothy would be proud," he said softly. "I hope so," I replied, a quiet strength in my voice. My phone buzzed. Another message from my family. They never stopped trying. This one was from Kenneth. "Rachel, Mom and Dad are struggling. Dad's in prison. Mom's barely surviving. I know you're angry, but they're still your parents. Can you find it in your heart to help?" I typed my response carefully, deliberately. They were never my parents. They were people who took money to raise me and instead used me as a punching bag for their inadequacies. I owe them nothing. But I'll make you a deal. I'll donate the exact amount they stole from me, $750,000, to a fund helping adopted children escape abusive families, in their names. That's the only legacy they'll have. I hit send. Then I blocked his number. A year later, I was featured in a prominent business magazine. Not as the adopted girl who inherited billions, but as a CEO running multiple successful companies and a rapidly growing foundation that had already helped over 500 children. The article focused on my work, my vision, my accomplishments. There was a small, almost incidental mention of my family drama, but it was firmly in the past now. The narrative had shifted. I wasn't the victim anymore. Wasn't the gold digger or the manipulator. I was simply Rachel, a woman who'd survived, thrived, and chosen to help others do the same. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that Victoria was indeed working in telemarketing, barely making ends meet. That Patricia, released from prison, was living in a women's shelter. That Gregory was still incarcerated, his health failing. That Kenneth was bankrupt, his expensive education worthless, without the connections and money that had always propped him up. Part of me, the part that remembered being a hurt little girl, felt a twinge of something. Not quite satisfaction, not quite pity. Just a profound acknowledgement that actions have consequences. That cruelty eventually circles back. My family never recovered from their spectacular fall. Victoria's desperate attempts to rebuild her life repeatedly failed, each venture collapsing under the weight of her reputation and poor decisions. Patricia and Gregory lived out their remaining years in poverty and isolation, their biological children too consumed with their own struggles to offer any real help. Kenneth's pride never allowed him to accept jobs he deemed beneath him, keeping him perpetually on the edge of financial ruin. They'd built their lives on a foundation of cruelty and entitlement. And when that foundation crumbled, they had absolutely nothing left to stand on. As for me, I built something lasting from the ashes of that painful past. Each child the foundation saved, each life changed, each cycle of abuse broken. That was my real inheritance from Grandma Dorothy. Not the money, but the understanding that sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be. And watching them destroy themselves while you're busy building something beautiful? That was simply justice taking its natural, satisfying course.